Hello, today I'll be doing a video on the board game Terror Below. This came out in 2019. I got it on a sale at the end of, I don't know, last October or early November. But I thought I would make another good October Halloween themed board game. So let's get started with how to set up and play. First thing you'll do is place the board in the center of the play area. Now this is a double-sided board. You'll want to place it on this side, the other side of the board. Well, it has this canyon on it. The rules say do not use that side, at least for your first game. I think that's more for an advanced game or something like that. I don't know. I've only played one game so far. But this side for your first game. Next, you'll take these location tiles and place them on the board in their starting spaces. The starting spaces have this skull, and in the rule book it shows which location goes on which starting space. For instance, the government facility goes in this starting location space. So I'll get the other ones put on the board. Alright, so we've got the government facility, the motel, the general store, the state police, and the hospital locations. Next, you'll take the deck of cards with this back. That's called the worm deck. You'll shuffle it and then place it near the bottom section of the board, somewhere where the players can reach it. This is called the terror zone, and you'll place it near that. Next, you'll take your deck of cards that has this back. That's your bounty deck. You'll shuffle that. Then you'll place it up near the top of the board, and then you'll flip the top four here face up to form your bounty line, like so. Then you'll take your deck of cards with this back. This is your weapon deck. You'll shuffle that and then just place it to the right of the board from the state police location. You'll take your item deck, which has this back on it, and place that just to the right of the general store. You'll take the deck of cards with this green back, that's your vehicle deck, and just place that somewhere where all the players can reach. For now, you'll take your target tokens and just place them here above the worm card slots on the board. You'll then give each player a vehicle pawn. So I'm going to have blue, green, and red or orangey. And you can give each player a player aid card that matches their color and vehicle. You'll deal each player one item card and one weapon card. Those are kept hidden from the other players. So I've done that for each of my players, one item and one weapon. You then deal each player 3 vehicle cards to form their starting hand. So as you can see, I've done that for each of my players. Next, you'll take this deck, shuffle it, and deal each player 3 character cards. Players will look at those, choose one to be their starting leader. So for this one, we'll have Homemaker Rebecca be our starting leader. Place the other ones underneath. Alright, so I've done that for each of my players. They each have their squad. Again, each squad has a starting leader that's visible. The other 2 are underneath. Any remainder character cards can just go back in the box. You'll take the 4 starting worm cards, which have this black border around them. You'll see the other worm cards do not have a black border. It's more of a, I don't know, reddish, maroonish. So you'll have separated out, if I didn't mention, the 4 starting worm cards before shuffling your worm deck. And you'll take each one and look at this shaded area, or this area here, and place an egg in this location of this matching color. So this purple, you'll see the color matches what this section of the board is up there. And you'll see it is in coordinate 2, 3. The blue numbers are here, and the orange numbers are here. So blue number 2, orange number 3, you'll place the egg in that location, and then the shaded spaces to either side of the egg, you'll place these rubble, pieces of rubble. So 2 to the left and 2 to the right of the egg. Alright, then we have this one, so we need a light blue egg in coordinates 4, 2. So the blue coordinate is here, and right there, that is 4, 2. And then you'll see we need a piece of rubble in each diagonal space adjacent to that egg. So 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. Alright, our next starting worm card shows an orange egg, and it goes in coordinates 3, 4. So 3 is here, 4 is here. So we'll place our orange egg there. And you'll see we need a piece of rubble in all 8 spaces around the egg. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now whenever you're placing rubble, you can place up to 2 rubble in one space. If there's already 2 rubble in a space, you would not place it. Alright, our last one is the dark purple. You can see from that color, it goes on a coordinate 5, 5, which is up here. And then we'll see we need 1 piece above, a below, and left and right, 1 piece of rubble. So there's 1 above, 1 below, 1 right, and 1 left. When placing rubble, I mentioned you can never place more than 2 pieces of rubble in a space. If rubble would be placed on a location, you just would not place it. There's some rules about placing eggs, which we'll talk about a little bit more here in a bit. Alright, that's our 4 starting worms. We'll just place those in our discard pile. If you're playing with 3 players, you'll go ahead and draw an additional card and set it up the same. So we'll need one of the lighter purple. And we'll see the egg will go in coordinate 5, 4. So that is going to be here, 5, 4. And then we'll need 2 pieces of rubble going to the left and 2 to the right. So 1 here and 1 here. And 1 here and 1 here. Alright, and then we'll just put that in the discard pile as well. If we were playing with 4 players, we would draw 2 additional worms and set them up instead of just 1 like with 3 players. And if you're playing with 5 players, you would draw 3 additional worms and set them up like you do with the starting worm cards. Alright, then we'll draw a worm card from the worm deck and place it in slot number 1. We'll take the target token that matches that and place it on the coordinates shown on that worm card. So 3, 3, which is here for this one. We'll draw another one that goes here. We'll look at the coordinates and place that target token. So 2, 6, 2, 6. And finally, for our last slot, we'll place the target token at 5-4. So 5-4. Place any remaining eggs, rubble, and other tokens nearby, as well as your dice. And finally, we'll choose a first player. It says the player who last defeated a worm is your first player. We'll just make our blue player our first player. Then starting with the last player, so if we were going clockwise order, green would be my last player. They choose a location to place their vehicle on. So again, the locations are these with the tiles, the other ones are spaces. So we'll say the green player is gonna start here and then going in counterclockwise order. So the next player chooses, they cannot choose the same location that a previous player chose. So we'll say maybe this player chooses the general store. And finally our first player, we'll have them choose the government facility. We also have these worm standees, which the rules say you can just place around the board for ambiance and terror. So we'll just place those around. I think they also have some use in the solo game besides just ambiance and terror. I think I saw that somewhere in the rule book, but I haven't read the solo rules, so I can't comment on what exactly they're used for. But in the 3-player game, they're for ambiance and terror. Okay, we're set up and we're ready to learn how to play the Terror Below, or just Terror Below. Alright, so kind of the story of the game is the government created these worms, weapons of remote massacre in the Nevada desert. I don't know, they escaped or something, but anyway, the government is paying for folks to collect the eggs and deliver them. So the goal of the game is to score 20 victory points. First player to score 20 victory points wins, and you get the victory points by collecting eggs and delivering them to locations. Alright, so let's talk about how you play, how you go about completing that goal. Oh, and I should mention, besides delivering the eggs, you can also score victory points by actually defeating the worms when a worm attacks you. And we'll talk about that here in a bit. But let's talk about the steps of a player's turn. Alright, so starting with your first player and going in clockwise order, players will take a turn. First thing a player will do on their turn is look at their hand of vehicle cards and choose one to play. We'll just, for example, take this pickup truck. Now, on a vehicle card, you have several things. You have the distraction section, which we'll talk about here in a second. Now, some may have arrows, like this motorcycle does not. These boots have 3. So that's called the distraction section. Then you have your action points, which shows how many actions you'll get to take that turn when you play that card. And then some cards may have an ability. Some take place when played, but others take place after you've performed your actions. So, a player will choose one of the cards from their hand and play it to one of the sections with one of the worms. So, for instance, we'll just say this player is going to play it to worm number 2 here. So we've played this into the terror zone. This is called the terror zone. So the first thing you'll resolve is the distraction section, if there are any arrows in your distraction section of the card you played. And you'll move the target token of that worm in the direction of those arrows from left to right. So we played this to the worm number 2 here. So we'll move the number 2 target token down 1 space. So here's the number 2. Because we have one distraction arrow that shows down, we move it down 1 space. Now if the distraction arrows would ever move the target token off of the map grid there, you would just ignore that arrow and go on to the next one. So if there was like another down in this space, you would just ignore that. But if there was then over here a left, then you would go ahead and follow that distraction arrow. Now you'll notice each of the worms has a number in the lower right hand corner. You can never play more than that many cards to the terror zone of a worm. So if there was already 2 cards here, you could not play a third card there. Or if there was already 3 cards under this worm, you could not play a 4th card there. Alright, so after you've selected a vehicle card and played it to the terror zone of a worm of your choice and resolve the distraction, then you get to perform the number of actions shown on that card. So in this case, this player would get to take 5 actions. You can do the same action more than once. So let's talk about the different possible actions. Alright, for one action, you can move your vehicle. This is our first player. So for one action, you can move your vehicle 1 space orthogonally. So this player can move over here. He could not move down, and you cannot move diagonally. Now the reason that he can't move down is because you cannot enter a space that has rubble. But he's got 5 action points, so maybe if he wanted to, he could move, 1, 2, and 3 onto this location. He couldn't move any further because that space has rubble and that space has rubble. So that's one thing you can do, is move 1 space orthogonally if you can. Again, you can't enter a space with rubble. You can move into and through a space with another player, but you can't end your movement for your turn in the same space as another player. You can stop and take another action in the same space as another player, as long as you are going to use another action point to move out of that space before you've ended all your movement for that turn. For 1 action point, you can ramp another player. So for example, if you were here, you could spend 1 action point to ramp another player. In other words, jump over it. So instead of spending 2 to move through it, you could spend 1 action point to ramp them and move over it. And you can change directions when you're ramping. For instance, if there wasn't rubble here and this player was going to ramp this player, he could jump and move here. So it's almost like moving diagonal, but you're never allowed to move diagonal. You always have to move orthogonally. But you could ramp up a player here and change direction and go here for 1 action point. Alright, so you can move 1 space orthogonally for an action point. You can ramp another player, as I just showed, for an action point. Another thing you can do for an action point is remove an adjacent rubble. So this player could spend 1 action point to remove this rubble that is adjacent to him. Adjacency is orthogonal as well, so you couldn't remove this diagonal piece for 1 action point because it's not considered adjacent. When you do remove a rubble, you place it on your leader's card. So for 1 action point, that player could remove that piece of rubble. Then for another action point, they could move here. For a 3rd action point, they could remove this piece of rubble, place it on their card, and so forth. So you can remove an adjacent piece of rubble for 1 action point. Whenever you've collected 3 pieces of rubble, you have to immediately discard those back to the general supply, and then you can draw either a weapon card or an item card. Remember, each player started with 1 weapon card, and 1 item card. And we'll talk about those here in a little bit. But I just wanted to mention again, whenever you've collected 3 rubble, you have to immediately turn those in to draw either 1 item card or 1 weapon card. Alright, another thing you can do on your turn is to pick up an egg, or if there's more eggs in a space, you can pick up all eggs in your space. However, when you spend an action point to pick up an egg or eggs, if there's more than one in your space, you have to be in your space, not adjacent like the Rebel. When you pick up an egg, you place it on your leader card just as you do when it's a piece of rubble. But, as I was about to say, when you pick up an egg or eggs in your space, that ends all the actions you can take for that turn. So even if you had additional action points to spend, as soon as you pick up an egg or eggs from your space, you can't spend any more action points that turn. Alright, and the final thing you can spend action points on is to deliver an egg. So if you've got an egg in your possession, you can deliver one egg to a location. So you have to be on a location and then spend one action point to deliver one egg. So when you deliver an egg to location, you score one victory point. You get that by just taking a victory point and putting it in your area. You'll keep those. That counts. Remember, I said whoever scores 20 victory points immediately wins the game. So if you deliver an egg to a location, you score one victory point. However, if you're delivering it to a location that has a bounty, remember we placed some bounty cards up in the bounty line during setup. So for instance, if you deliver a light blue egg to the state police location, instead of collecting one victory point, you take this bounty card. Whenever you deliver an egg, you go ahead and discard it. But again, instead of taking one victory point since you fulfilled a bounty, you then put this this bounty card, underneath your leader, and it's worth 3 victory points instead of the 1. Now you don't take the 1 and get the bounty, it's one or the other. So if you fulfill a bounty, you take the card and you'll have that many victory points, but then you don't also take the single victory point. And whenever you collect a bounty, you immediately take the top bounty card and refill the space that you took the bounty card from. And you'll see like this one, if you deliver an orange to the motel, that'll be worth 4 victory points. If you deliver a light blue or a light purple to the hospital, that one's worth 3 victory points. Now this one's a hunt. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's a way you earn victory points, by delivering eggs to locations that have a bounty. Or you can deliver it to any location, even if it's one that doesn't have a bounty, and collect 1 victory point for that. Now, in addition to collecting the victory point or the bounty card, there is also a delivery bonus. Whether or not you got turned in a bounty card or just collected the 1 victory point, there's also a delivery bonus depending on which location you deliver that egg to. If you deliver an egg to the general store, you get to draw an item card. If you deliver an egg to the motel, you get to collect 1 victory point. If you deliver an egg to the state police, you get to draw a weapon card. If you deliver an egg to the government facility, you can either draw the top bounty card from the deck or take one from the bounty line and take that and put it face down in your play area, and that's a hidden bounty that only you can fulfill. So whenever you fulfill that, you reveal it to the players and score the victory points on that, just like if you were fulfilling one from the line. But again, since it's in your play area face down, only you can fulfill that one. If you do take one from the bounty line instead of the top of the deck, of course you refill the bounty line. So there'll always be 4 face-up bounties on the bounty line. And if you deliver an egg to the hospital, you can bring one of your dead characters back to life, placing them face up under your leader card. We haven't talked about how a character gets killed, but if one does, then you flip it face down to its dead side and choose one of your other squad members to become the leader. But if you deliver an egg to the hospital, you can bring one of your dead characters back to life. So I guess really, since you couldn't bring a dead character back to life, I guess they're, I would say, even though the rules say they're dead, since it's possible to bring them back if you went to the hospital, I would just say they're critically wounded and can be brought back to life. But anyway, the rules say you can bring a dead character back to life. So that's if you deliver an egg to the hospital. And that pretty much covers all the possible actions that you can do. So to reiterate, on your turn you'll play a vehicle card to one of the terror zones under a certain worm. You'll then resolve that card starting with the distraction arrows for the worm, the target token of the worm you played your card to. Then you'll perform however many actions that card you played allows you to perform. And then next you'll resolve the special ability on the card. So this card doesn't have a special ability, but for example, if you'd played this card, after you've taken your actions, you would then perform its special ability, which is move all target tokens one space closer to you. Again, when you're moving tokens or your vehicle, the movement is always orthogonal, never diagonal. So after you do the distraction, perform your actions, then you perform the special ability on the card if there is one. Now, as I said, some of the cards, like for instance these boots, you'll perform that when you actually play it. This one says, when played, discard another vehicle card and gain additional action points equal to its number value. So you would perform that special ability when you played it. But if it doesn't say when played, then you perform it after you've performed all your actions. And then finally on your turn, you will refill your hand back up to your hand size, which is normally 3 cards. We'll see that this leader has an ability that his hand size is 4 cards. And that's what a player does on their turn. After a player's turn, then you check if there's a worm attack. Alright, before we talk about a worm attack, let's talk about our item and weapon cards. I've mentioned that you get one of each at the start of the game, and then I've mentioned ways you can acquire more. So let's take a look. Item cards normally tell you when they can be played. Any item cards that are in play are tied to the leader that you have. So if that leader ends up being killed, then you'll have to discard any item cards that you've got in play. Now, item cards you haven't played yet that are still in your hand, then they don't get discarded and they have no effect until they're played. But for instance, this one, if you play it to this leader, when you play this card, you gain 1 victory point and gain an additional victory point each time you kill a worm. Discard this card if your leader dies. You may only wear 1 hat at a time. So there's different item cards. And then weapons are normally used when you're hunting the worm. For instance, this one says, during a worm attack, discard this card to roll 2 dice, deal damage equal to the higher of the 2 dice. So they're usually involved in the worm attack, which is also when you can hunt the worm. So let's go ahead and move on and talk about worm attacks. I mentioned that on a player's turn, they'll play a vehicle card to one of the tear zones of a worm. And I mentioned that you can never put more cards, you can never play a card to the tear zone of a worm that already has the amount of cards that's shown on the number. So if there were 3 cards here, you couldn't play an additional card here, and so forth. I mentioned that previously. So after a player's turn, before the next player takes their turn, you check each terror zone, and if the number of cards in that zone is equal to the number shown in the lower right hand corner for that worm, then that worm will attack before the next player's turn. So for example, at the end of the first player's turn, if he had played two cards here, or if there was two cards here at the end of his turn, then this worm would attack. Now, the first thing you'll do, some effects may have you place a card face down. So some worms, when they're going to attack, and the cards that are placed face down do count toward the limit that can be shown, or that worm can have. So the first thing, if the number of cards, like in this case 2, does equal the number, if there are any cards face down, you'll go ahead and flip those face up and resolve the distraction on them. So in this case, if we flip this one face up, we would move the number 2 worm, as that's the one that's going to attack. We would move it 3 spaces. That's only on ones that are face down. Ones that are face up, of course, their distraction has already happened. If you have multiple cards face down, then you resolve them in the order they were played. So you would start with the lower one and resolve the distractions. So that's only if cards are face down. If there's no cards face down, then there's nothing to do for that part of the worm attack. So, from my understanding, the target token is basically where the worm is and where they're going to be attacking from. Now, when the worm attacks, after you've resolved any face down cards and done the distraction for them, first thing you'll do is resolve this section of the card, just how we did during setup when we did that with the starting cards. You know, we placed an egg where it showed and then placed all the rubble around it. So that's the same thing you'll do when a worm attacks, except for you'll do it where the target token is. So in this case, this worm is attacking. You would place an egg where the target token is, which is space number 6, and you'll place it of the color shown. So this would be orange. So we would place an orange egg there, and then we would need to place rubble in all the shaded space around there, but because these spaces, you know, down here don't exist, the only places that will get rubble are this one, and this one, but this one already has 2, so we wouldn't put an additional one, so we would put one here and one here. If this worm was the one that was activated because maybe it had 3 cards, and that's the amount that it can have, then you'd be activating target token number 3. You would put an egg in the space where that target token is, which would be here. You can have more than one egg in a space, so you'd put a light blue egg in the space where the target token number 3 is, and then we would place a rubble in the spaces diagonal to that. So, well, we wouldn't place one there because there's already 2. We would place one here, and one here. So I think you can see how that works. So after you've placed your egg and your rubble, you then discard any vehicle cards that were there to a discard pile, discard that worm to the discard pile for worms, then draw a new worm and place the target token in the grid coordinates for that one. Now, as I mentioned, when the worm attacks and you're placing the egg and rubble, you never place rubble on a location. You never, if the rubble won't go on if it's off, the rubble would be placed off the edge of the board, you wouldn't place it. You never place the egg in a location, so if the target token was in a location, you would not place the egg there. Instead, you would roll these coordinate dice and place the egg in that location. So in this case, it would be 1, 3. So 1, 3. Now, the attack is still taking place wherever the target token was. So if there was a player's vehicle token there or vehicle pawn there, then they would still get attacked. So we haven't talked about the players getting attacked. If when you're placing the rubble or the egg, when a worm is attacking, if a player's pawn is in one of those spaces, either where the rubble is or where the target token is, or where an egg is being placed, then, and that's even if you have to roll the coordinate dice and place an egg. If one of the player's pawns is in a location where an egg or the target token or a rubble is, then they are attacked. So we'll just show, for example, if this player's pawn was here and this worm attacked, you would end up placing an egg here and then a rubble here and here. So we'll just do that. We'll place a rubble here and a rubble here. It does get placed, even though your vehicle normally can't move into a space with rubble. A piece of rubble can be moved into a space where your vehicle is. So if this worm was attacking, because its target token is here, the target token number 2, you would place an egg where the target token is, and rubble if you can, which the only places we could place it is right here. And then because this player's pawn is there, they are attacked. So they have a chance to defend themselves or hunt the worm. And to do that, they have to use their weapon cards. So right now, this player just has one weapon card. Let's see what he's got. During a worm attack, discard to roll a die on a result of 1 to 3. Nothing happens on a result of 4 to 6. You deal 7 damage. So he could discard this card to roll a die, and let's just see what he would get. He got a 6, so he would do 7 damage to this worm, which has a health of 6. So he would actually defeat the worm, and he would not take any, he would not be killed. If he cannot generate, if you have more than one weapon card, you can use as many as you can or need to try to defeat the worm. If you don't defeat the worm, then your leader is killed, as I mentioned earlier. You flip them over. Any item cards or weapon cards that they have currently attached to them would be discarded as well. Again, not item or weapon cards that are still in their hand, only ones they've played. But if more than one player are caught in the attack, like for instance, if this player's pawn was here when this worm attacked and a rubble was placed here and here, they would both be involved in the attack, so they would both get to hunt the worm. So out of the players that are involved in the attack, the one who had taken the last turn gets to try to hunt the worm first using any weapon cards they have. If they don't deal enough damage to defeat it, then it moves on to the next player in clockwise order, or at least my rulebook says next player in clockwise order. I downloaded a FAQ for this game, and it says in counterclockwise order, but I don't know that that's official, so I'm going to go with what's in the rulebook I have that says in clockwise order. So again, the last player who had taken a turn that's involved in the attack gets to play their weapon cards first. If they don't deal enough damage to it, then the next player in clockwise order that's involved in the attack can also play their weapon cards. And if they can, in addition to the damage that was done to the previous player, if they can add enough damage that then they equal or exceed the health of the worm, then the worm is defeated and neither player loses their leader. But if they still don't equal the health of the worm with their weapon cards, then both of those players' leaders are defeated and killed. And if there's a third player involved in the attack, then they can also be involved. But only the player that deals the killing blow or deals the final amount of damage gets the credit for killing the worm, if they are able to. If you are the player that dealt the damage that defeated the worm, then you can collect 1 victory point. Or if there is a bounty, like for instance this one, there's a hunt bounty for any worm. So if this worm was defeated, instead you'd take the bounty card if you were the one that dealt the final amount of points that defeated the worm. And that would be worth 4 victory points. You know, you'd slide that under your leader card. along with any other bounties you've already collected. And then, of course, you would refill the bounty line. But if there is not a bounty, or if you don't have a hidden hunt bounty, then you still just collect 1 victory point. All right. But if the worm is not defeated, then any players that were caught in the attack, their leader is killed, as I mentioned. And then they lose any item cards. They have to immediately discard any item cards or weapon cards that were in play for that leader. And then they choose amongst their other squad members one of those to be their new leader. If your leader is killed due to a worm attack, and your leader was carrying any eggs or rubble, then they immediately get dropped in the space where your player pawn was. And also when you're defeated, you'll remove your player pawn, and then when you start your next turn with your new leader, you'll place your player pawn on a location of your choice that doesn't already contain another player. All right. And I think I already mentioned this, but if the worm is defeated, you discard the worm card. Well, whether it's defeated or not, you'll always discard the worm that made the attack along with any vehicle cards there, draw a new worm card, and place the target token for that worm in the coordinates. And that's it. You'll continue to take turns like that until a player manages to get 20 victory points, at which point they immediately win the game. But if a player has all of their leaders killed, then they are eliminated from the game, and each of the other players will get 1 additional turn, and then after they've each had their 1 additional turn, the player amongst them that has the most victory points will be the winner. If there happens to be a tie in that case, then the player who has collected the most bounty would win. And if there's then a tie for that, then those players share the victory. But that is how you play Terror Below. I think everything is how it was already right after setup, but I'll make sure of that, and then we'll go through a few example turns. One other thing before I do that, I don't think I mentioned this, but each leader has a special ability. I think I did show Life Coach Sebastian here that his hand size is 4 cards. Shepherd Old George here. If a worm attacks Old George, you may choose to kill Old George. If you do, you defeat the worm. And then old Rebecca Homemaker here. You can end your turn on the same spot as another player. I had mentioned normally you can't end your turn on the same spot as another player, but she has the ability that she can. Right, so let's get started with a few example turns. Alright, so we'll start with our first player here. Let's see, first let's look at we'll go ahead, since it's their turn, we'll go ahead and play this item card to Homemaker Rebecca here. When you play this card, gain 1 victory point, so she'll gain a victory point. We'll put that in her play area. Then she gains an additional victory point each time she kills a worm. Our weapon card will play that if we're having an attack. Alright, so then the first thing she needs to do on her turn is play one of their vehicle cards to a worm. So we'll just have her play her motorcycle, and she'll play it to the queen. And the queen is a little different than the other ones we've seen. It can take up to 5 cards, but you'll see when she attacks, normally you'll place, like these other ones, you place an egg where the target token is and then the rubble around it. When the queen attacks, you place a rubble where the target token is, and then several eggs around it, and then all the other shaded spaces have a rubble token as well. So she's got a pretty big attack area, and it takes 20 points to kill her. But it does take 5 cards before she'll attack. So we'll go ahead and place the motorcycle there. It doesn't have any distractions, so we don't have to move the target token at all. And now Homemaker Rebecca has 6 action points that she can spend. So she will spend 1 to take this rebel. That's going to go on her card. Alright, she will move here for her second action point. She'll take this rebel for her third action point. She will move here for her fourth action point, move here for her fifth action point, and for her sixth action point she will take this egg. And that goes on her card as well. Sixth action point is all she can spend. Now she's got to resolve the special ability on the card, move all target tokens one space closer to you. So we'll move number 1 here. Number 3 was here. I moved it to here. And number 2 will move to here. Alright, now she will refill her hand by drawing a new vehicle card. So her hand is back to 3. Check for worm attack. None of them have the amount of cards. These ones have none. This one doesn't have 5, so there's no worm attack. So now we go to the next player. Alright, we'll see what Life Coach Sebastian wants to do. We'll just play this sedan since it has some distractions and we want to see that. And we'll say he's going to play that here to Terror Zone 3. Now it does have some distraction icons, so the first thing we have to do is move the token number 3 2 spaces to the left. So it is up here, so it moves over here onto the government facility. Now we can take 4 actions. So first thing we'll have this player, they're going to take, this is their vehicle pawn, so they're going to take this rebel, place that on their leader card. They'll move, that's their first action. Second action, they'll move here. Third action, they'll move here. And for their fourth action, they will pick up this egg. So that will go on their card. Alright, now they got to move do the special ability on their card, which is move any target token 2 spaces. I think they want to move target token number 1, 2 spaces. Alright, get that queen away from them. And that is final thing on there. So they'll refill their hand, and they can have up to 4 cards. Their hand size is 4, so they'll actually refill with 2 cards. Alright, now we check for worm attack. No, there's no worm attack. We need 3 here, 2 here, or 5 here. So no worm attack at this time. We'll come to old Shepherd, old George. He's got an item card. He's going to play this trucker hat. He'll play that to his leader. Once per turn, you may move diagonally. And then they've got a hunting rifle as well. Alright, so now he's got to choose a card. We'll just have him do his 18-wheeler. And we'll have him play that on the boomer here, so as not to trigger any worm attacks anytime soon. There's no distraction tokens. Now he gets 7 actions. So for 1 action he'll pick up this rebel. For another action he'll pick up this rebel, so that's 2 actions. For his third action he will move here. For his fourth and fifth action he'll pick up these rebels. Well, first, for his fourth action, he'll pick up this rebel. Now he's got 3, so he's got to discard those. He can take a weapon or an item. He's going to take a weapon. We'll look at that later. Alright, so for his fifth action, he's going to take this rebel. For his sixth action, he will take this rebel. And for his seventh and final action, he will move into this space. Alright, he's also going to play this military satellite card that he got to his leader. That will be attached to his leader. And allows at the start of your turn, roll both dice. If a target token is on the resulting coordinates, that worm is killed. If a player's pawn is there, their leader dies. Discard this card only when you hit something. So we'll have to remember to do that at the start of his turn. But otherwise, now we have to do the special ability on his card, which is move the nearest target token to your space. Well, the nearest is This one's going to be 1, 2, 3. Uh-oh, the queen is the nearest. That gets moved to his space, so he probably needs to get out of there. But now he'll refill his hand, so he'll just draw one card. And that ends old George's turn. Alright, we're coming back to Rebecca. She has a light blue egg. And there is a bounty at the hospital or at the state police to deliver a light blue egg. She is up here. State police is a ways away, and the hospital is almost just as far. She could deliver it to any location, but if it's not one of the ones with the bounty, she'll only get 1 victory point. So she doesn't want to do that. So she'll look at her cards. She's going to play boots to the queen, and it says, when played, discard another vehicle card, gain additional action points equal to that number's values. May not be a 7. Well, we'll discard this, which is 6, so we'll just put that in our discard pile. So that 6 and the boots 2 gives her a total of 8 action points. Now she does distract the one worm, so 3 to the left. 1, 2 is all it can go, so it'll ignore the third one. And now she gets to spend her 8 action points. So she's going to go 1, 2. For 2, she'll pick up this rubble. That's going to give her 3 rubble. So she'll discard those, and she'll grab an item. Let's see what we got. Oh, another hat. That's not going to do her any good. I'll have to save that till we have another leader. Alright, so that was 2 action points. She has 8. So then she'll go 3, 4, 5, 6. She will 7. She'll use 7 to deliver this egg. And she delivered that at the state police. So she gets this bounty, which is worth 3 victory points. So now this player has a total of 4 victory points. She still has 1 point left, so she will move up here. So that's 8 points. She already used the ability on the card because it was a when played, so nothing left there. So now she refills her hand. She's only got 1 card because she played 2, so she's got to refill back to 3. So she'll draw 2 cards into her hand. And we check for worm attack. This one's only got 2 and needs 5. This one's only got 1, it needs 2. This one's only got 1, it needs 3. So no worm attack. We come to the next player, Life Coach Sebastian. Oh, and we forgot to refill this bounty up here when we did that delivery. Alright, Sebastian's got an orange egg. There is a bounty for that at the motel, and that's right up here. Alright, we're going to have Life Coach Sebastian. He's going to play an 18-wheeler, and just so we can see a worm attack, we'll have him play it here on the boomer. But so that's going to be worth 7 action points. There's no distraction token, so now he gets his 7 action points. So he's going to spend 1 to collect this rubble, put that on his card. His 2nd action point to move here. His 3rd action point, he'll collect this rubble. That gives him 3. So he'll spend those to grab another weapon. Alright. Alright, his 4th action point will be to move into this space. Now he could spend his 5th action point to pick up an egg, but then he won't be able to spend any more action points. Once you pick up an egg, then that ends your actions for the turn, so he doesn't want to do that. He'll leave that there. He'll use his 6th action point to move it to the hotel, and for his 7th action point, or the motel, for his 7th action point he will deliver his egg to the motel, and he will collect this bounty that's worth 4 victory points, delivered an orange egg to the motel. So we'll just put that here in his play area. We got to refill that bounty. Alright, he has spent all his action points. Now we have to do the special ability. Move the nearest target token to your space. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 away. This one's going to be the closest one, the 3, so that's going to move to his space. I knocked this egg over, I think it was there. Alright, now he's resolved the special ability. He's going to refill his hand. He spent 1 card, so he's going to draw another card into his hand. Now we check for worm attacks. We've only got 2. We need 5 here. We do have 2 here. It takes 2 for the worm to attack, so we will have a worm attack here where the number 2 target token is. So first, we'll put an orange egg where the token is. So that is going to be here. And then we will place rubble in all the adjacent spaces, there's none, so we'll place one here, 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 and here. Because those are the shaded spaces we see here. Again, you don't place one where the egg is shown. You can't place one in a location, so we won't place one there, but we will place one here where the blue player is. And right there, which means he is being attacked, because when the worm attacks, if you're where the target token or an egg or a rubble is placed, then you are being attacked, and so at that point you'll hunt the worm. Neither of the other players are involved in the attack, so they can't hunt the worm. So the blue player has to try to defeat the worm. They just have this hunting rifle. During an attack, discard this card to roll 2 dice. Deal damage equal to the higher of the 2. They're going to need a 6 to defeat this boomer. So we'll see. Hope for a 6. And unfortunately, the highest is a 5, which is not going to defeat the boomer. So sadly, Homemaker Rebecca is killed. So we'll flip her card over. If she had any rubble or an egg on her, we would place that in the space. Now, if when you do that, the rubble being placed there would make more than 2 rubble there, you would just discard the extra back to the supply. But her black hat gets discarded. And we had to discard this rifle because we used it during the attack. Alright, so now we choose between FBI agent Laura or taxi driver Grady. Let's go with taxi driver Grady. Now we don't lose our delivery that we did. I mean, we still have that and still have the 4 points. But taxi driver Grady is our new leader. Alright, now the boomer does get discarded after its attack along with any cards that were there. We then draw a new worm and place the target token, number 2 target token, on 3, 4. So that's 3 and 4. Alright, so now we have a new worm out. Alright, now we'll do the turn for Shepherd Old George, and then we'll probably wrap it up. So, first we have the military satellite. At the start of your turn, roll both dice. So we'll do that. Alright, we got 4, 2. So 4, 2. There's nothing there. If the target token was there, you'd get to kill the worm, or if a player pawn was there, you'd kill their leader. But we didn't get anything. So we leave that. You don't lose that until you actually hit something. So now they play a card. So we'll just say they're going to play the bicycle here to worm number 3. And so we have to move number 3 down 1 and right 1. So down 1 and right 1. Okay, now we have 3 action points. So he'll spend 1 action point to pick up this rubble, which is going to give him 3. So now he discards those, and we'll have him grab an item, trucker hat, which he already has, but can use that for another leader if he gets killed. Alright, that was 1 action point. For a 2nd action point, he will grab this rubble, and for a 3rd action point, he will pick up this egg. And he only has 3 action points, so that's all he gets to do. Now he does the special ability on his card, which is play a vehicle card face down as a distraction. So I mentioned that at some point you would play face down cards there. So he's got 2 motorcycles. It's not going to matter which one. So he'll play this one. Now he'll refill his hand. So he's got to draw 2 to refill back up to 3. Now we check for worm attack. Well, we've only got 2 out of the 5 required here, none here, but we do now have 3 cards, and that's the amount required for the worm here to attack, so number 3, so it will. So we will place a blue egg where the number 3 target token is. So we'll take that, place it here, and then we'll place rubble in the diagonal spaces. So diagonal to that is 1 here. Would be 1 here, but you can't place rubble in a location. So 1 here and 1 here. Nobody is attacked because nobody is in a space where a piece of rubble was placed or an egg was placed or the target token is located. You know, this player was safe because they happened to be in that location. Otherwise, a piece of rubble would have been placed there and then they would have been attacked. But nobody was. So now we go ahead and discard these cards, discard this worm, put a new worm out, and put their token at location 6-3. So that's worm number 3 is going to go in 6-3, which is right there. And that's going to end Old George's turn. And now we move on to Taxi Driver Grady. But I think I'm going to wrap it up there. You can see how the game plays. So you're going to want to move around, kind of pick up and deliver the eggs. If you can, defeat the worms, because that gives you victory points as well. But you may want to stay away from them if you don't think you have enough weapons to defeat the worm. You know, Taxi Driver Grady doesn't have any weapons currently, so he probably wants to stay away from them. And you want to keep your leaders alive. So that's it. I think it's not mentioned in the rules or anywhere that I saw anyway, but this seems to be themed after an old movie. Actually, I think it was several movies, but the first one was called Tremors. And it came out, I don't remember, early 90s, I think. And then I think there were several other ones, which I maybe saw 1 or 2. The first one is good. If you've never seen it, it actually is pretty good. But the other one, I think I maybe saw the 2nd and 3rd one and didn't think too much of them. And I think there was even more, but I couldn't tell you. Anyway, in the first one, which is in my opinion, the only good one, they weren't really picking up eggs and delivering them, but there were these underground, creatures terrorizing a small town. It was kind of funny. Anyway, that's completely off track. I just wanted to mention that I thought this seems like maybe it was themed off of that a little bit, or the idea came from that. But I don't know, I think I need to play this with other people to determine how fun it actually is. Playing it solo as 3 players. Now, I will say there are some variant rules and advanced rules and a solo mode. I haven't tried any of that or any of these. I just played it by myself, but as 3 players. I played a complete game, and it was okay, but I think it would be a lot more fun with other players, so I can't give a real opinion until I've played it with other players. But anyway, I think you can see how it plays, so you should be able to form an opinion of your own. I don't know that it was very creepy for Halloween-ish, but I guess if you pretend that these underground monsters are hunting and attacking the people, maybe so. I don't know that there was too much ambiance and terror from these standees. Oh, I did want to mention that the rule book was not good in my opinion. There was a lot of things that came up that I didn't think they had spelled out how it should work. Very good in the rules. They were kind of confusing and vague, and just it seemed to leave out a lot of things that came up. And I was like, well, what happens if this, like it mentioned, if a worm attacks, a rubble gets placed in your space. Well, normally you can't have a rubble. You can't move into a space with there's a rubble. So if there's a rubble in your space, can you move out of it? Can you go ahead and get that rubble with one of your action points? Stuff like that wasn't really explained. I did try to look up as many of those kind of things as I could. Like I said, I mentioned I found a fact that I don't know if it was official or not. But for instance, that in that case, it did say that you could pick up a rubble that's in your own space with one of your, remove one adjacent rubble actions. You could do that from your own space. But, just things like that weren't in the rules. So not a great rule book for sure, at least in my opinion. But I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.